What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm checking out one of the most highly anticipated motherboards to support 6th gen Skylake processors on the Z170 chipset. This is the Asus Maximus VIII Formula, and it's the latest addition to the brand's ROG lineup. It's also the latest addition to my pile of stuff that doesn't suck. Coming in at a hefty $400 MSRP, now might be a good time to have a sit down with mom and dad about your next allowance raise. The first of many robust features this board brings to the table is its stealthy ROG armor, which includes a plastic shield on the front to minimize dust buildup, and a metal backplate for reducing potential board flexing and trace damage. Thermal pads beneath the backplate also aid in cooling the VRM, as we've seen on other Asus boards like the Sabertooth X99. The overall aesthetic of the Maximus VIII Formula is a big win in my book, as the ROG armor appears ferociously badass without overdoing it or seeming tacky. One of the Formula's key cosmetic features is a neutral black and silver color scheme, which deviates from the red accents traditionally found on ROG offerings. This design choice serves to complement the board's built-in RGB LEDs, so that consumers finally have a motherboard that looks good with any color on the spectrum. As you and I both know, having RGB lighting on a component that has a loud color scheme is kind of like going to Hometown Buffet on a strict vegan diet. It's kind of pointless unless you're really into salad or something. I'm always amazed to see how many vendors miss this simple concept, but fortunately Asus has nailed this one on the head. Putting the RGB stuff on pause for now, here's a look at the LGA 1151 socket for Intel Core 6th Gen Skylake CPUs. I've been informed that without this, the motherboard will not work. The Extreme Engine DigiPlus VRM features microfine alloy chokes, NextFET MOSFETs, and 10K black metallic capacitors. A great reminder that the more patented words you use to describe your components, the better they are. For those of you with an appetite for liquid cooling, Asus has teamed up with EK to deliver a beautiful and functional water block for your VRM. The inlet and outlet support G1/4" fittings, and while I haven't dissected the block myself, a great review I found on BitTech praised the heatsink for making direct contact with the VRM, whereas other integrated blocks often see less coverage than women's golf. When testing the block with a custom loop and 240mm radiator, the BitTech crew found the VRMs to run 5 degrees Celsius cooler than air alone. I'd call that a success, and having EK in the mix certainly gives this water block some street cred whether you're cooling on air or liquid. For RAM, we have 4 DDR4 slots which support XMP profiles, dual channel memory, a 64GB max capacity, and speeds up to 37-33 MHz. PCIe connectivity includes 3 Gen 2x1 slots and 3 Gen 3x16 slots supporting 2-way SLI and 3-way crossfire, with the following operating speeds you see here, based on your GPU configuration. In its usual spot, our Z170 chipset hides behind a lovely brushed metallic piece of ROG armor. As we'll see in a moment, the RGB integration here is fantastic, giving this chipset a lot more curb appeal than this one. On the storage front, we get 6 SATA 6 ports running off Z170, and 2 additional SATA 6 powered by an ASMedia controller. You also get a pair of SATA Express ports and a single U.2 for NVMe storage devices. Since PCIe lanes don't grow on trees, the U.2 and one of the SATA Express ports share bandwidth with the M.2 slot that's hidden by a removable cover. Here, both SATA and PCIe Gen 3x4 drives up to 110mm in length are supported. One of our SATA 6 ports is also sharing its bandwidth with the bottom PCIe x16 slot, which is set to X2 speed by default. We have ROG's Supreme FX onboard sound chip, equipped with a beefed up amp DAC and Nichicon capacitors. Quality sounded crystal clear, and I was able to hit a nice max volume with my 250 ohm DT880 Pros. To enhance the listening experience further, Sonic Studio 2 lets users optimize their sound profile for gaming or inferior forms of entertainment. Familiar onboard features include a debug LED with error code output for assistive troubleshooting, and backlit power and reset buttons. The ever so useful Memo K button also makes its return to help correct certain initialization or frequency issues with your DRAM that prevent your system from posting. Here's a look at our 4 PWM chassis fan headers, 2 more for the CPU cooler, and a dedicated header for AIO water cooling pumps. You also get 3 T-sensor connectors for hooking up optional temperature leads to monitor your system's thermals. Other features include 2 USB 2 and 2 USB 3 headers, and I particularly like the right angle orientation of this connector for for cleaner cable routing. Now, one of the more recent additions to ROG boards is a dedicated built-in header for RGB LED strips. Running an LED strip off the motherboard instead of directly from the power supply not only simplifies cable management, but allows users to control the LED strip via the motherboard's built-in software, but more on that later. On the rear I/O, we get buttons for clearing the CMOS and flashing the BIOS, connectors with included antenna for AC Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and DisplayPort and HDMI video outs. With increasing USB 3 requirements of upcoming VR headsets, it's nice to see no less than 6 USB 3 ports on the Formula, and there's even 2 USB 3.1 ports in the form of a Type A and Type C. One of the USB 3 ports supports Keybot 2, a nifty Asus feature that lets you assign macros and functions to your keyboard for things like one-press CPU overclocking or booting straight into the BIOS. Finally, a PS2 port and audio jacks with optical SPDIF out. Woo! That was a huge info dump that I just took on your chest, guys, but don't hit up RedTube just yet, because we are finally ready to power this board up and check out its RGB fixin'. So let's kick it over to Vlog Kyle for a lighting demo using the Asus Aura software.
Hey, thanks Script Kyle. How's it going, guys? So right here you can see I've already got a system going with the Maximus VIII Formula. We've also got a couple RGB LED strips from Cable Mod that are already wired up. Now the motherboard comes with an 80 centimeter long adapter, so that you can pretty much route the LEDs wherever you want in your case, and that's pretty much just wired directly into that RGB header on the board. So yeah, this is pretty much our setup right now, and as you can see, we've got a red theme going, traditional ROG colors, and that actually goes for both the RGB strips as well as the LEDs on the motherboard. They are matching, because in the Aura software here, we have this little box check that says Sync LED Effects, so that's going to sync both of those elements. And any color I change this little wheel to, boom, the whole entire system, both of those elements will respond accordingly in sync. Now you do have the option to unsync it if you want to go ahead and switch things up and have both of these sections operate independently of each other. For example, if you want the motherboard to be all pink and stuff, you can go over to your header, which obviously controls your RGB strips, and set that to a different color. Just click apply, there you go. You've got a brightness bar over here. This bar over here is if you just want the color white, and you can adjust the brightness there as well. And then beyond that, you have some varying effects here. So not only if we wanted it blue, but if we wanted the RGB strips to be blue while breathing, you could do that. Go back over to the logo, and they call it logo, but it's pretty much all the RGBs on the motherboard. We're gonna make this yellow, and we're gonna make it strobe, baby. Strobe all night long. So now you've got the blue breathing on the RGB strips, and you've got yellow strobing, seizure-inducing goodness on the motherboard. And as you can see on the motherboard, we've got the chipset that lights up, as well as the Formula logo in the center, the branding in the middle there, and then also we've got a nice strip by the VRM, kind of by your rear I/O there. And I think they look pretty nice. I mean, by far my favorite is the chipset. I think the chipset just looks really awesome. It's a very even coat of lighting. The Formula, the other two are kind of spotty. I mean, you can kind of tell where the LEDs are. There's like hot spots that are somewhat visible behind that translucent cutout on the ROG armor there. And I would have liked to see a little bit more even coat of light as we see on the chipset. But overall, they look really nice. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the strobing before I give myself a seizure. We'll do some more gentle breathing. And why don't we go ahead and sync these, because I think it just looks a little bit nicer when everything is matchy-matchy. All right, so here's a quick look at the breathing. Boom. The LEDs turn all the way off, and then they pulse back up. You guys already saw strobing. Unfortunately, there's no way to adjust the speed or the rate at which these LEDs breathe, or strobe for that matter, or any. There's no speed adjustment for any of these effects, and it would have been nice to see some of that implemented as well. But what can you do? Maybe a patch update will fix that. Asus, if you're listening to us, hear our plea. So you've got color cycle as well, and I was a bit disappointed on this one. I'm not sure if there's anything else at play here other than the software being relatively new, but yeah, as you can see, the RGBs, the LEDs on the motherboard aren't exactly in sync at all with the LED strips, and that's kind of a bummer. There are some moments, like right here, where they're both the same. I think that's just kind of out of luck, but for the most part, they're pretty much missing each other left and right, and that's kind of too bad. We've also got music effect. You guys are familiar with that. I'm not going to demo that, but you know, music plays on your desktop or whatever. in Windows, and then the lights dance around and everyone's happy. And then lastly, we've got CPU temperature here. This is also pretty common these days with the beefed up RGB LED strips or kits. We've also seen this in the NZXT Hue Plus, where your LED color changes based on the temperature of your CPU. And I don't believe you can customize the colors of these various temperatures. You're pretty much just stuck with green, yellow, and red. And that's pretty much it for Aura. I mean, it's a very simple software. It's still fairly new, so I think it's gonna be some time until we see a bit more functionality, which would be really nice. As long as they can fix that color cycle issue, I think this is pretty solid all around. As for the LEDs on the motherboard, like I said before, I do wish those hotspots weren't as noticeable, but for the most part, they look really nice, and they are super accurate in terms of matching with the RGB LED strips. Which is really important for something like this. So altogether, nice job Asus, and why don't we go ahead and kick it back over to Script Kyle.
All right, thank you, Vlog Kyle, for shedding some light on those LEDs. Okay, all right, so to sum up, the Maximus VIII Formula has a lot of things going for it. Superb storage options, water cooling integration, and healthy features serving both form and function are all aspects of the board from which enthusiasts will benefit. As is the case with ROG boards, users can also expect top-notch build quality and a smorgasbord of useful software. Personally, the new stealthy look falls right in line with my taste, and I have to commend Asus again for making a color-neutral motherboard that gives users free range over the RGB spectrum. What's more is that they've managed to hit a Goldilocks sweet spot here, where the RGB lighting gives your system a noticeable facelift without stealing the show. Frankly, the only big concern I can see most people having with this board is the price. Being the first really good RGB motherboard on the market clearly comes with a premium, and enthusiasts will have to decide for themselves whether to adopt now or wait for prices to fall once such boards become more mainstream. As for those of you who have the means, I reckon you'll be making sweet socketed love to this board long before it ever reaches your chassis. Hashtag sloppy seconds. But that is gonna wrap it up for now, guys. Let me know what you think of this thing in the comments below, and don't forget to toss me a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Before you go, check the description below for my CPU cooler shirts, which are now available in a new sexy material, and feel free to bookmark my Amazon affiliate link down there and use it when you buy stuff.
Make your dreams come true!
As always, I'm Kyle with Awesome Sauce Network. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see y'all in the next video.